Wow, we are live.
Hi, David. How are you?
We're good.
So, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today's webinar is Agency Trends for 2023. Which challenges should they be prepared to face? I'm Santiago Bibiloni, co-founder and CEO of COR. And today in this webinar, we're going to discuss the insights from the COR report and the challenges agencies should be prepared to face in 2023. Our special guest for today is David Sable. As you might know him. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good, Santi. Good to see you as always.
Thank you. Same thing. David is one of the most recognized names in the creative industry. Today, he's a current author, entrepreneur, and activist. And in my opinion, he has shaped the world of advertising as we know it today. He's the former global CEO of VMLY&R, formerly known as Young and Rubicam, or Y&R, part of WPP. And he has also been vice president and chief operating officer at Wunderman Thompson. These two, like Young and Rubicam and Wunderman Thompson, are two of the largest creative agencies in the world. Regarding this report, more than 500 agency executives around the globe responded to the survey that we did. And the report, which was carried out by COR, has been also in collaboration with the IAA, International Advertising Association, and Ad Forum. And it mainly shows the importance of having metrics in an industry where they're normally generally scarce, and also the fact of being able to do benchmarking to fully understand the current situation of the marketing industry, right? In our end, COR is strongly committed to empowering creative and professional teams. Not only has it embedded in its DNA as having all founders coming from this industry, but the ability to learn from clients and users' experiences, habits, and needs, but also from new trends and technology. We are very determined to learn and grow, and we believe that creating a sharing experience like this one is crucial. So, hope you find this interesting and useful. Getting straight to the webinar, in first place, today's agenda is to talk about how the reality of marketing and advertising is asking us to base management decisions on data. And secondly, we will discuss these numbers shown in the COR report and see how these numbers reflect David's track record. So before we jump into the COR report and some questions, I'll want to remember all of you to please feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A section. They will be responded at the end. David and I will take some time at the end of the webinar to read the questions and go through them.
But also, Santi, just to interrupt for a second, folks, if you put in a question that's relevant to something that we're discussing, and it's just, we'll try to do it live. Yeah. So I always love if there's a question that is relevant and important and is spot on to what we're discussing, get it in that Q&A thing quick, and we'll expand the conversation.
So, David, as we mentioned earlier, we need to become more data-driven, and we need to make more decisions based, not on perception, but on data. So my first question, very general question, to then dig into more precise data. What is metrics management like in agencies for you?
So let me back it up just a bit and talk about what it means. See, I think the problem is we don't want to be talking about the data or the metrics per se. What we want to really talk about is the outcomes. And what is it that I need to get to for those outcomes? And I think that when we go through some of the information from this survey, which was really very good, and everybody really should read it, I think what you're going to find is that the answer is, in fact, metrics, different metrics or metrics of a sort. And the answers that we got back from people are all around, I think can be put around a couple of things, which are agency, the relationship we have with our clients, and profitability. Like those are the two critical issues. And so if we can't measure our profitability, and if we can't somehow use metrics to impact positively our client relationships, we've got a major problem. And I can tell you that, and I think that the people from the bigger agencies know this is true. I can't think of how many times I would hear from the people in finance, such and such account isn't profitable. And I remember one quarter, it's like, I knew that we were driving big profit, but every account that came back to me told me none of them were profitable. And it's like, no, that's impossible. It can't be, because we're turning a profit on the business. So I think that there's that issue for us, for the agency, like to actually know whether or not you are profitable. I mean, there was a time when I was at Burson Marshall or Conan Wolf, now it's called BCW, where literally, Santi, we used an Excel spreadsheet every week to see who was billable, who wasn't billable, who had extra time, what accounts needed people to fill in roles that they would have gone out and maybe brought freelancers in for. And we had open time here. Literally, we sat every Friday with Excel spreadsheets and did this by hand. It was crazy. And of course, we know that we can now, use COR to do that, but that's not even the point. The point is that it was important, it was critical, and it helped drive our business. Now, we're also challenged, all the agencies are challenged, because clients tell us how profitable we can be, which of course is an issue for many of the bigger agencies. I mean, the smaller agencies don't quite have that issue. Now that I'm independent, I don't, but I did for so many years, like clients would tell us, you can't be more profitable than X. Well, okay, but that means that I have to be efficient so that profitability actually works for me. So that's on my side of the business, but then come back to the client. All of that impacts our relationships with our clients, because if we're not profitable, if we have no visibility, if we're not able to actually manage our business well, it always ends up messing up the client relationship. And then we'll talk about visibility later, because that's another issue that clients have with us. So the answer is we need the metrics, but we don't need the metrics or to be data-driven just because it's a digital thing and we can do it. That's what I like to call digibabble. We have to think about the outcomes. The outcomes of better client relationships, which I think is at the top, because that drives everything. And then the management and profitability of our businesses.
And David, how important do you think it is for agencies to do benchmarking?
So benchmarking is critical, but it depends where and how you're benchmarking and who you're benchmarking against. One of the things in my experience that I've learned, every account is different. There are no two accounts that are the same. And I think that that's actually probably one of the critical reasons to have really good metrics, because there are pieces of the business that if you can track and if you can create benchmarks around, will help you with the next account, even though the metrics that might drive that relationship are way different. And I think that's really important. I've never seen I've never seen any two clients in my entire career that are managed the same way. And so, for example, I mean, you and I have talked about this before. When I hear agencies talk about the new model, I once, by the way, did a Google search on that. I think there were like 15 million hits on agencies that said they have the new model. So there's some agencies that every 6 months talk about their new model, right? The new client model. So by the way, I always tell clients, is there any clients on the line? Here's a tip. Any agency that comes in and tells you they have a new model, I would throw out. Because the fact of the matter is, what does the agency model really have to do with your business? It's your model that's really important. And I think that one of the reasons that I need to have good metrics and that I need to understand my business is because I have to fit each account to meet the client's model. That's the key. That's what drives the best relationship. If I have to take the client and have just sort of this one model fits all benchmark going on, then by definition, I'm not going to have the best relationships with my client, nor am I going to drive the best work. So I think it's critical that we're able to look at the things that we know that we can control, the visibility, the profitability of a piece of business, the team usage. These are things that are just fact of any way that I set myself up. But I need to be flexible enough and be able to use that data so that I can create the right teams, the right engagement, and the right measurement for any client that I have.
Excellent, David. And I agree. Thank you for that. So if you're okay, we can get a deep dive into the COR report to start seeing which are the outputs that we got from all the people that attended the survey.
Sure, let's go.
So as we can see here, when we asked these people which role were they having in their companies, in their agencies, as we can see, like CEOs and other C-level positions take like almost 35-36%, but then principals, VPs, and directors and other management positions, which are kind of like also very relevant, like, or very senior roles within the agency, take the other like 40%, right? So this is a survey which was answered and completed mostly in its like 75% by very senior positions within 500 different agencies around the globe. When we asked about geographics, we got that 70% were local. It means US based, and then we got another 30% from international agencies. Which country are you from? Here we got other like different countries, like the US, India, Mexico, and some like. Can we move forward with the next slide? Right. So we're gonna start with issues regarding project management and questions regarding project management. When we asked people how do they know their team's capacity and if they knew it in real time, the answers we got were that almost like 50% of the agencies, they don't know with precision their team's capacity. This means that they don't know where they are working at, for which project, for which client, and the lack of visibility, of course, makes them take very wrong decisions, right? David, what's your opinion and what's your track record, your experience regarding this subject?
So I think the notion of capacity is always critical. And the truth is, I think any good manager knows the managers, as you go up, you know less and less. As you go down, you know more and more. I think we always knew what projects people were on. I think the big question was what kind of time they had available. Who had used up their time? Where were we sitting on the scope of work in terms of what we're actually getting paid to do? Were we under delivering? Were we over delivering? I think I can tell you that most agencies end up over delivering, meaning which used to be a good thing because it meant you were giving good service. But when you were getting paid more, it was great. Today, because you're limited, over delivering just means that you under budgeted. And so you've got to somehow be able to balance all of that because you burn people out. And that came out as one of the pieces that we're going to see in a bit. We burn people out because we put too few people on too many projects and we're not managing their time well across all of them. So I think, again, at the end of the day, we need to know these things. If we don't have a really good way of understanding like I said, I did it once on an Excel spreadsheet once a week. If we don't understand it, we'll never reach profitability, and I guarantee you it'll hurt our client relationships. And I see we have a question. So all I understand is the hola. So thank you for the hola, Adrian. But Santi, you have to translate.
Oh, yeah. So this is Adrian, and he's asking if we can share the source of the data. Yeah, Adrian. So this, as we said at first, this is a survey that COR did in collaboration with the IAA and Ad Forum, where over 500 agencies executives responded, from 30% from US based, because in the previous slide it said 70% and 30%. I think it was like 30% US based and 70% international, and then we have 75% of the roles being from directors and upwards, right, to CEO. So continuing with the slides, profitability and time tracking. So when we asked these over 500 executives around the world how they were calculating their project's fees, most of them, like 60%, they answered that fees were being calculated by their previous experiences. And it's very interesting because when we deep dive, when we do a deep dive on what past projects and past experiences means, it means that, for example, when it's like web design, for example, when we ask like, hey, how do you calculate, how do you send a proposal for a web design? They mostly think of different web designs that they did before in their previous agencies, like on their previous jobs, and how much time it took. But they don't take into account like who's gonna take the project now, for which client, and how is the project composed by. Like it's not, we're not taking into account how this project, like this web design, this new web design for this new client that is going to be taken by this new team, that all these three things were not like available on your previous job, on the previous agency you were working at. And even though this reality, people were sending proposals based on their previous experiences. And that made a huge deviation in time when they thought of like time it will take and the time that actually takes, right? So, and then 23% responded that they did it by benchmarking, and 17% by estimation or guessing. David, what is your take on this?
So I think it's actually pretty accurate. I think that the notion of past projects and past experience is probably true. I think people do it all the time. I've seen it. And what's the problem with it? The problem is, as you say, sometimes it's just, hey, when I was at agency X or agency Y, this is kind of what I did. I think it's also because some people think that they're looking at a past project is benchmarking. But what they don't know is that that past project that they think that they're benchmarking on, even if it's in the same agency, wasn't profitable and was a disaster. Like I've seen that happen 100 times, where you just come in and somebody says, okay, like we did this for client X and it cost us $5. So let's say it's $5. The problem was, what they don't know is that's what they budgeted for client X. It actually cost $12, but the costs weren't allocated properly because nobody wanted the client to know that it actually cost them 12, and so it went in different places. And so that doesn't work. I think benchmarking the problem with benchmarking today is, as you know, many agencies, particularly in the bigger, in the holding companies, work across multiple agencies. And so trying to benchmark or even just taking from past projects, if you don't have a good system to do it, is very difficult because the billing rates are different, the usage rates are different, the expectations are different. And so very often, I think that's when we fall into the guesstimation area. So that's 17, 18%. Which is true, because I think there is a lot of that going on, is because when you're working across multiple agencies, or if you're working with an outside vendor and you're just not sure. So my view is, again, what is this critical? Let's just look at what the outcome is, and not just the notion of why we need to benchmark and have good data. Because if we don't calculate that fee accurately, we're going to hit a wall with the client where we're under delivering because we don't have enough or the right people working on it. The client's going to get frustrated. We're going to say, you didn't pay us enough. Like we're stuck. And they're going to say, but you told us that's what it cost. And so you agreed to do it for that price. And before you know it, you have yet another client crisis on your hands. So critical area.
And therefore, when we ask these management people, these managers, we ask, like, what are the main reasons they think that causes budget changes? And when we ask this question, it will be great if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, great. So when we ask managers which were the main reasons that they think that caused these like budget changes, as we can see in the first 3 results, we had like change requests, deviations on the project, and under budgeting. And if we think out of like these main 3 things, they are mostly the same, right? Like change request and deviations on a project is mostly the same. Like the change that the client requests makes the deviation on time, right? And when I speak to prospects and clients, and I mean myself, I've been an agency person for half of my professional time, and before launching COR, and I understood that apart from creativity, I mean, it doesn't matter at the very end of this like film or this story. It doesn't matter if we are selling creativity or if we are selling legal stuff, or if we are selling programming or accounting services. it's all about the billable hour market, right? It's the billable hour industry. It doesn't matter which service we offer, it's all the professional services industry. So what's the core business of an agency, of a consulting firm, of a software development shop? The core business of these companies is to sell all the amount of hours available at the largest price possible. You need to be senior as the senior, like if you get, as soon as you get more senior, you can sell those hours at a higher price, right? And so that's your goal, to sell all your hours at the highest price. But then what's the mother of the problems? So that's the goal. Perfect, very clear. What's the mother of all the problems that then agency have? It regards in time, and it comes with deviations. So that's why I think this slide is crucial. When a customer requests a change, or maybe your boss within the agency says like, hey, we gotta change this. All these changes make deviations on time. And when we, and the difference between what we estimated at first and what it really takes at the end of, like, when we deliver the project, that difference on time is what makes profitable projects unprofitable and available teams unavailable, right? And there, on the deviation, is where most of the problems are generated. Then we have like less profitability, then we have overstaffing, then we have a bunch, like we have apart from overworking, turnover, employee turnover, which is at least on what we are seeing some trends, it's reaching 60%. So employee turnover within the agency industry is becoming very, very high. And not to mention the last year people like leaving every industry, a lot of employees leaving all companies in every industry, and agencies within the agency space, it is even more and more deep. So almost 75% of the reasons for budget changes are under the agency's control, and are related to lack of a data-driven approach in agency management. And 50% of these budget changes are related to changes and deviations from a project. For me, David, this is like, as I mentioned earlier, for me, this is why time is so important within this industry. What do you think about this?
Yeah, again, I think, just following the theme here. So deviations could be a lot of things, you're right, but let's just look at the change request. So you're working on a project, you have a budget, it's kind of tight anyways, because definitely you went in tight on the budget, for sure. And all of a sudden the change requests start coming in, it happens. Or maybe you had a new idea, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. But all of a sudden, it impacts everything that you've done. And so if you don't have good data, I guarantee you've under budgeted and understaffed. So I'm just sort of reversing the way to look at this page, but you definitely have not forecasted your resources properly. Your deliverables and your performance are critical because they're impacted by the fact that you've under budgeted and you haven't forecast what you need. The process is separate, we'll put that aside. Transparency is really critical, but interestingly enough, transparency keeps coming up depending upon which question we're asking. It's more or less important, but I think transparency with clients is really critical. But to me, it's really, you got to be facing the under budgeting, resource forecasting, and the deliverable performance. because that's a direct outcome of not having good metrics and not understanding where you are. And so if you get the change requests, and if you get deviations on a project, of course your budget's going to change. Like, that's clear. Your budget's not changing because you've under budgeted or understaffed or your resource forecasting. That's why you're getting screwed. And so this is a waterfall effect. And as you keep going down, you just get more and more screwed.
Agreed. And so we're mentioning how important time is on this business, right? And the outputs, as you said earlier, David, what's the output that you get from this data, right? Because we all know that we know that time is very important. And it's the core business of all professional services firm. But at the same time, we all know that mostly like creative people hate to log hours, right? So, and not just because it's tedious, but because they don't feel it's fair for the idea they have, the amount of time that the idea took. Also because they don't want to feel controlled, right? So everyone hates to log hours, right? But at the same time, the fact of not having this data gives you the output, gives you no output mostly, right? So when we ask these people, how do they manage time tracking at their agencies, over 50% said that they were not tracking time, and the ones that over 50% said that they were doing no time tracking, or they were doing time tracking manually, right? And when we did a deep dive on manually, we understood that in most of these cases, it's on a quarterly basis or in a monthly basis that this gives a huge margin error, right? When you gotta remember what you have been working at 30 days ago, a month ago, the amount of hours that you think you allocated to client A or B makes no sense, right? So as you were mentioning, the outcomes, like garbage in, garbage out, right? If we don't have precise data, we can be building our clients very unfair rates, right?
Well, most of the time, rates. So here's what I would say, right? So as we know, there are people in the industry who have been peddling faster, cheaper. Now, the problem with faster, cheaper is that the content that our advertising is put up against is not being produced faster and cheaper. In fact, it's slower and way more expensive. So we live in a world where the content that our work is being put up against is the best content ever produced. It is also the most expensive content ever produced. And it takes time, right? If you're waiting for the last season of Better Call Saul, it's over a year. Right? If you're waiting for the next season of Viking Valhalla or The Ring or whatever, it takes a long time, but that is incredible. So it's not faster, cheaper, it's efficient and better. That's what we need to be focused on. And we've lost it because we don't have the efficiency. So that's number one. Number two, this is critical because to be efficient, we need the right data. Now, part of the problem is we know that there are creative people who feel they don't want to be held. They said, I have creative ideas. How can you put time against it? How can you tell me that I have to turn it out in an hour? Well, guys, whatever it is, there's no money to be had unless we can figure out how to get work done within whatever scope of work, time, budget, et cetera, that we put in. So that's important. right? We have to figure it out. So I know we don't like doing automate. We don't like doing time entry. And by the way, if this was live, I'd be asking right now everybody in the audience to raise their hand honestly. Is it close your eyes so you don't have to see what anyone else holds their hands up on, so you can be totally honest. Like, who actually inputs their real time? And I'm ready to bet that not 5% of somebody raised their hand. Good for you. I give you credit. But I'm ready to bet that not 5% of the people actually input their real time. Because we're not lawyers, we're not accountants, we haven't been trained to do it because we don't make that direct connection between our time and the profitability and the work that we do. So I think it's critical that we have a way to do this so that it's not a problem, so that it's easy to do, and so that I, as a creative, understand this is a tool for me too. This is going to help my creativity. This is going to help me be able to do a better job. So is that only me? Is that only my picture freezing, or did my speech freeze as well?
I think it was only your picture.
Great. So we have a question, Santi, from Lindsay Gray. Thank you, Lindsay. How do you avoid getting to a state of overanalyzing or over-updating hours and forecasting throughout the course of a project? Sometimes overanalyzing can take team away. I totally agree with you. And we all know about analysis paralysis. It's a bad thing. So again, I don't want to be shilling for COR, but I mean, full disclosure, I think everybody knows, I've been an advisor to Santi from the very beginning. I agreed to be an advisor to this company because I think I agree with you. I hate over analyzing, and I hate over updating, and I hate use of data, which is why I started with, I don't care about the data, I care about the outcome. But I need the data to get to the outcome. So the way to do it is to create a system, or to have a system, which because they've created, to have a system that allows you to do this in an efficient and easy way, but gives you real data that you can actually use. Doesn't give you too much data, doesn't give you too little data. It gives you the actual data that you can use so that you can have a transparent relationship with your client, so that you do know what your resource availability is, and you are able to actually benchmark because you have real data. So Lindsay, I hope that answers your question. And Steve, you say, Steve Bush, thank you again. If agencies do not track time, do you have any tips or tricks to calculate profitability? Well, you can talk to Santi afterwards and get a license for COR. I mean, that would be, but even if you start, if you heard, Steve, I hope you were on the beginning, I was talking about having done this on Excel spreadsheets, just simply looking at how much budget I had, how many people I had working, and how much I needed to get done, and who else in the agency who was working or who wasn't working, so that you understood what your resource availability was, so that you could put, if you had them, assuming you did, put the right people at the right place at the right time. Right? It's like targeting. We talk about this all right, Santi. We talk about this all the time. We target, right? Right people, right place, right time. That's the mantra. That's the channel planning mantra. That is the profitability mantra. That's what COR does. Right people, right place, right time. That's the key. So hopefully, Steve, that answers your question as well.
Yeah, and to Stephen's question as well. So not tracking time and being able to measure profitability are two things that don't relate, right? I mean, time for agencies is their cost, right? Like you have your employees within the agency, and you pay their salaries for the time they spend for your clients. If you don't know how much time they're spending on these clients, you don't know how much those projects are costing, right? So it's something very obvious and very like basic, but sometimes we forget about that, right? We think that because we're just paying salaries. It's like a sink cost, but it's not. I mean, we can choose where we spend that time with, who we spend the time with.
Sandy, I just want to answer one question because I think it's an important point and it's something that has to be cleared up. So Nadine Khoury put a question in the chat, but I want to make it clear. How do you tell our clients that things fast don't work as slow and efficient? That's not what we're saying. It's not about that things work better if they're slow and efficient and that they don't work if they're fast. Things might work just as well if they're fast. They might work worse if they're slow. The issue in both cases is efficiency, because efficiency will get you to an answer quicker. So it's not about whether you're fast or slow. It's about if you're efficient, if you're using your resources wisely. Because if you're not using your resources wisely, clients are not going to have any patience for you, which is basically what you're saying here. Clients will not have patience and you're going to lose money. And if you lose money, you have no business. So I don't want anybody to think that we're saying that that slow and efficient is better than fast. It's that efficient is the key here, not fast or slow. It's efficiency. And I think that's really important. It's not cheap. It's not about being cheap and fast. It's about being efficient. And I think if you think about efficiency, it changes the way you think about your business. So Nadine, hopefully that answered your question. Good, Nadine. Santi, you're on mute.
Oh, so sorry. I didn't wanna make any noise when you were answering your previous question, and I started talking again on mute. So then we asked these managers, these agency managers, if they will agree on granting their clients access to their project's progress or resources, tasks. It means like if they can give their clients visibility on how the projects, the delivery dates, the drafts, all the kitchen, like all the progress of their projects, how was it going? And the answers we got is that almost 50% won't give access to their clients, and 50%, and their other 50% would give access with some restrictions. And David, I know you are a big fan of being access and transparency to clients. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, folks, let me be really clear. This is something that Santi and I have been talking about from day one, and it's something that I've been very passionate about with him and his team. This, to me, is the secret weapon. It's a secret weapon for new business. It's a secret weapon for the best client relationships. It's a secret weapon for your profitability. See, the problem is we get into negotiations with clients, and again, depends on the clients, but as you all know, many of the clients today are asking you for everything about your team. They want to know the salaries. They want to know bonus. They want to know your overhead. There's nothing that they don't want to know, and they tell you how profitable you can be. They have forced a trend, and they have audit rights, right? So they have total transparency into your business. Let's be really clear. That kind of exists already. What we're not doing is making the process visible. And I think that is the single biggest thing. I have a scope of work. I agree on a scope of work with my client. I want the client to understand exactly what's happening with that scope of work. I want them to understand if we're going on a straight line or not. And if we're not, have they deviated from their scope? Maybe they have. Maybe I haven't resourced properly. Wow. Think of that. I want them to understand that if they forced me into a budget, I kind of agreed to, and I warned them that might not people will do our best, we'll do our best. If they see that you're actually in charge and that you actually have data and you actually are resourcing your teams right and managing your time and managing your resources, and you can't get there, well, that's where the discussions have to go. Like, why is that happening? Is it because they're making unreasonable demands? Sometimes. Is it because you're still understaffed? You have the wrong people? Sometimes. But unless both sides have full visibility, there's no way you can get there. And by the way, your next set of negotiations will go way better because you'll have shared metrics, a shared benchmark of delivery that you'll be able to use moving forward. So from my perspective, the 46% that said no, you guys ought to be rethinking it, honestly, and start thinking about how do you use this as a secret weapon and force the partnership so that you're not just a vendor putting nuts and bolts in a bag and sending it to them, but you're a partner. And that partnership includes resources, profitability, accountability, etc. So hopefully that makes sense to all of you who are listening, but I really think that's beyond critical.
And when it comes to technology, we wanted to understand how many tools agencies were using to manage their businesses. And 60%, almost 60% said they use three or more tools to manage their one operation, right? And therefore, like if we go also to the next slide, we wanted to understand if this outcome, because as you were saying, David, it's not about the input, it's about the output. And we wanted to understand, like if using three or more tools was generating any problem. And as we can see also that people were using, some of them were using near 10 tools. And we asked if data silo was an issue at their agency, and half of it responded yes, right? And when we asked why, it was mainly because it takes time to analyze information on different platforms, right? So the importance of having everything within one tool become very clear for these people after answering the survey, right? And also the fact of, if you think like, let's put this on a day-to-day example, right? You're using a project management tool, then you're using a time tracking tool, then you're using a BI tool for crossing data and seeing the outputs within the BI tool. Then you have HR tool or your ERP, where you have your salaries, your fees. Then you have some collaboration tools for chats. So there you have like 5 tools that they don't interact with each other. And then you have this silo issue, that is analyzing the time you spend with a project that is allocated on another platform, and the time that these people spend, which is being multiplied by the hourly rate of this person, which is on another platform, that is also taking the fee from the client to subtract all the cost from this to show profitability. Like all these different platforms can bring like so terrible outcomes, or so difficult to analyze, data that is so difficult to analyze, that for most of these people, was not a, like having a lot of tools was not a solution. And David, what do you think?
Look, obviously, it's such an important point. So here we are in an industry where we can barely get people to track their time, and then we come to them with multiple systems. And the problem with the multiple systems is it's sort of, again, obvious that forget data silos. I'm not sure everybody understands that, but each product or each system is in a different place, as you said. So obviously there's data silos. And you're left with a bunch of automation that looks good, but people aren't using it in the right way. And they certainly haven't evangelized any of it into the creative teams and into the management teams. So when I look at it, I think, okay, I need one system that my creative people, my account managers, that the people who are touching the clients believe in and works. And then the question is, what else do I need with that? They don't need to know anything else. They don't need to know 3 systems to go back and forth. I've been there. I've seen what it looks like, right? You go 3 systems and you're switching screens and you're putting some information in here and you're putting some information here and you're putting some information here, and you get it back and somebody makes a presentation at the end of the month or once a quarter and nobody has a clue what any of it says. It's just silly. We need one tool. If you believe in the outcome, again, we have to stop thinking about tools. We have to stop thinking about data. It's what is the outcome? What is it I'm trying to drive? And I think if we get there, then it becomes very, very clear what we need.
So this is most of the COR report. If we think of the major findings that the report is a little bit longer. If for any of you that want to download the report, you can go to projectcor.com and find it there, and also on our social networks. The major findings of this report, we think, are that 50%, more than 50% of agencies don't know with precision their team's capacity. That's like horrible. And none of the agencies calculate fees with precise current information from their operations. All these previous experiences based on previous people handling the projects, different customers, like different clients, all these leads to a very unclear estimation of time of how much the project or fee, how much time it should take, right? And then over 50%, 65% of agencies track their time either manually or they don't track it at all. So for this 33% that they don't track it at all, please, you should start tracking it. Even as David said, on a timesheet, on a spreadsheet, right? On an Excel. But for the rest, the ones that are spending a lot of time doing it manually and having a lot of misleading outcomes because of the margin error that can occur by logging hours a month after, we should think on trying to solve that, right? And then only 33% put their team at the center by choosing a client that preserves their agency talent. And 60% use 3 or more tools to manage their agency's operation. David, we are 5 minutes away. I wanted to say first, before we end this webinar, to all these people that are listening us, first of all, thank you. And feel free to reach us out if you're needing a one-on-one counseling on how to solve agencies' problems and to work together on the challenges that agencies might be facing this new year. And David, just to wrap up and close, what is the role of these solutions on your end? Like, what do you think about the role of these solutions focused on agency management?
So I'm just going to keep beating it because I think it's really important. It's the outcomes, Santi. I want everybody to go back. Don't go back and start thinking yet about the data and, oh my God, what is it? How many licenses do I need to buy from COR or from anybody? And do I have the right data? And am I going to get it too much data? Am I going to start thinking about the outcome that you want? And I'm going to tell you what I think the outcome should be, and you'll forgive me, but I've been doing this for a couple of years. We, my friends, are in the service business. We often forget that. Our clients come to us, hopefully because they trust us, hopefully because they think that we're going to give them the best work and the best thinking. But we're in the service business. That is what we do. And we need to take all the friction out of the system, the friction that doesn't allow us to get to an idea in the most efficient way, if you will. Fast or slow, it's irrelevant, the most efficient way. The friction that causes problems with our clients, the friction that causes us problems inside the agency and has people quitting because we're burning them out or we become a sweatshop. We need to get rid of it. And I do believe that one of the key factors in getting rid of that friction is understanding where our issues are, understanding, getting to a place where I can use data to resource properly, to budget properly, to understand where I'm under-resourced, et cetera, and then to work with my client to make it clear to the client so they understand where their actions impact that as well. And if we can do that, I think we'll change the paradigm in a huge way. So hopefully, folks, and I thank you all for listening, hopefully that really gave you some food for thought. And gives you something to go back and think about, because I think that's really the key. I think you need to go back and start thinking about what outcome do you really want? And that is the thing you need to think about. If the outcome you want is to convince a client that you can go slower, that ain't happening. That horse left the barn. If the outcome you want is how you can serve your client better, which is going to make you more profitable, bingo. Then make sure you call these guys quick and learn as much as you can. So there you go. Again, thank you, Santi, and thank you all of you. And hopefully it was interesting and, as I said, gave you food for thought.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to us. And a special thank you for you, David. It's always a pleasure to hear you, and thanks for enlightening all of us.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice morning out there. Bye-bye.
So